Welcome to the introduction to Florida's Family Empowerment Scholarship for Unique Abilities. A lot of people refer to this by the different agencies that are involved, for instance, Step Up for Students. But this particular program is specifically for kids with very specific disabilities. So we'll get into a little bit of what it is, what it covers, how to apply, and then, of course, there'll be some time for questions at the end. So this is basically what I just said. What is the Family Empowerment Scholarship? How does a child qualify? What is the application process? What is covered? So the first part of it is what it is. So a little bit of a history lesson here. The Family Empowerment Scholarship for Unique Abilities is a state-funded program. It is for school-age kids, so ages 3 to 22. And with very specific disabilities. Those disabilities are listed in the handbook for this program that is put out by the state. It's administered by two different companies. You've got Step Up for Students and the AAA Scholarship Foundation of Florida. These two companies, the vast majority of people in the state do use Step Up for Students. They do have a little bit more user-friendly program, but AAA is another option. Both of them honestly have good and bad, so do a little bit of research with this one. The names have changed a lot over the years. It used to be referred to as the Gardner Scholarship, and then you had the McKay Scholarship, which was a separate program. Gardner, even before that, was known as the PLSA. Honestly, that was a few years ago, and I don't even remember what PLSA stood for. But you may hear some of those terms floating around from people who've been around the block a little bit. It is set up as a school choice option where families can decide what kind of education their child receives. So basically it is an option outside of public school. So it involves private school, homeschool, and online schools. The funding can only be used for educationally relevant expenses. So if you think of what a child needs in the school, that is an expense that would be covered by the Family Empowerment Scholarship. So obviously, things like books and those types of things. There's quite a few. The handbook is very robust in describing what is covered and what is not covered, what needs prior authorizations and things. We'll get into that in a second. So how does a child qualify? First of all, you have to have a specific diagnosis. Again, there's quite a few of them, so I'm not going to go through them one by one. They are listed in the handbook. You do have to present proper documentation for that diagnosis. And that involves, clinical diagnoses. It involves certain kinds of documents from the school district and things like that. Again, we'll get into that when we talk about the applications. The child must be at least 3 years old and not have graduated from high school yet. For the individuals who are seniors or at the end of their senior year and they decide to defer their diploma, and in an effort to take advantage of transition programs and things like that. Just like in the school district, they can defer until their 22nd birthday. So this scholarship does cover them through that time period as well. And it would cover, the same transition type of services that would be covered in the public schools. The family must reside in the state of Florida. And again, you have to provide proof of that. And the child must disenroll from public school prior to using the scholarship. This is one little tidbit of information that is not well communicated. It's documented in the handbook, but parent to parent, there has been a lot of misunderstandings and misinformation out there. So while you are waiting for funding, the child can remain in their public school even though they have been approved for the scholarship. If you're not funded, you're not technically using the scholarship yet. Once you're funded, the child cannot attend public school and use the scholarship at the same time. You have to choose between those two options. There are repercussions, obviously, if you don't withdraw your child. The state does do audits, as do the scholarship programs, Step Up and AAA. You will have to return your funding, and you could actually be barred from using the program in the future. So it is kind of a big consequence if you are kind of caught double dipping, essentially. Now, as far as the application process is concerned, the first thing you have to do is choose one of those two providers, so either AAA or Step Up. You can find more information about these two on the Florida Department of Education's website. If you go under the school choice options, it provides links to both of their websites. You definitely want to research both of them before you make a decision. You cannot switch between them later. So if you start with Step Up and you start to have issues, you cannot switch to AAA and vice versa. So once you're in, you're in. You want to go to that provider's website. So once you choose your provider, you have to go to their website to complete the application. They have different processes, although the documentation is the same. So you want to make sure that you're following the processes for that particular provider. So you've got to go to their website. They both have instructions on their websites and even videos to kind of guide you through it. The documentation that you're going to need to provide. You have to provide proof of your child's age, so birth certificate, social security number for the child and the parent or guardian. There are documents that you need to fill out as the parent, separate from the child, because it is a program where the parent essentially becomes the teacher, if you will. Proof of residency. This could be your driver's license. It could be, your property tax bill, those types of things. Again, in the handbook, it lists all of the different options. There's quite a few. Proof of diagnosis. This has to be a clinical report. A school report is not going to be sufficient. So there are some instances where the school is the report of the issue, if you're talking about learning disabilities and those types of things. But when you're talking about things like Down syndrome, autism, spina bifida, they're going to need a clinical report from a doctor, from a physician, an MD or a DO, that does get into exactly what the diagnosis is. If it is not sufficient, they will ask you for more. So there is that. If there is an IEP, you want to provide a copy of that. There is an option, once you are approved, you get a one-time review of the IEP or the child's needs. So you would need to provide additional documentation if you have a child with more high support needs, so a more severe disability. Then you would be possibly allowed some extra funding to help cover some of the extra needs involved for that. But it is a documentation process that you have to go through after you've been approved. So you got to do the application first, and then you can request the review. They only do it one time through the entire school life of the child. So it is something that you want to make sure that you don't do kind of willy-nilly. So that is one option. Now, as far as the different expenses covered by the program, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just kind of the most frequently used things. Again, the handbook, and there's even a purchasing guide. They're like 25 pages of lists of things that are covered, what the requirements are for having them covered. They are very, very specific on things. People who are professional providers of these services, and they must show their credentialing, they must show their licensing. So they take it very seriously, and you do need to make sure that you do all that. It's not meant to be kind of loosey-goosey, just use your money however you want. You have to justify it. So different educational expenses, obviously tuition, and that would apply for private school or online school. If you're homeschooling, you can purchase curriculum, you can purchase support materials like books, computers, chemistry sets. You can do, if you're doing a curriculum on cooking or other things, there are some circumstances where you can get the authorization for even things like pots and pans and measuring cups and things like that. So you can get a little creative with it, but you have to show that there is an educational need for what you're asking for. Internet service is covered by the scholarship, private tutors, full-time and part-time, school furniture and equipment. So they will provide a desk. They will provide like possibly some PE equipment or things like that. If an older child is enrolled for dual enrollment for college classes, those are covered. After school programs, they do get a little tricky with this, so you want to make sure you have proper authorization for these things. But they do cover after school programs, but they do have to be geared for somebody with a disability and have some academic output to them. Same thing for summer programs. They do have to be educational in nature, but it would be covered by the scholarship. Different services that are covered. Of course, you've got, the different therapies: speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy. They do hippotherapy, which is the therapeutic horse type of therapies. Music and art therapies are covered. There's more than that, but again, these are the most frequently used ones. Transition services. So for the kids that are age 14 and up, you've got job coaches, pre-employment programs that are meant to teach about interviews and resumes and all of that. On-the-job training programs, and there's a lot more in transition services as well that could be covered. Behavioral support, ABA. I believe there are some families that have also tried to get floor time type of programs involved, since those do work on the social skills, which, again, is an educational subject line. It's even on the IEP. So depending on how you get that authorization in place, that is something that potentially could be covered. I'm not going to say it is, because it's going to be different for each situation. So depending on how you present the need as being educationally relevant, it is something that could potentially be covered. Recreational programs for physical education would be covered as well. There are a lot of guidelines on the recreational programs, though. So again, you want to make sure that you are double checking with whoever the scholarship provider is, whether that be AAA or Step Up. Make sure that it is covered before you start paying a lot of money for these things. Now, as far as if you have questions, the main websites to go to here, you got the Florida Department of Education. That's going to be the one that gets into what the kind of legal requirements are for the programs. AAA Scholarship Foundation of Florida, that is one of the providers. And again, go to their website for information specific to their program and how to apply for their program. Step Up for Students, same thing. Go to their website to get the information specifically for their programs. They both do have handbooks and so forth on their websites, so definitely check it out. They should be almost identical handbooks because it is based on the state program, not on their individual programs. But you will also find information on some of the other scholarships on their websites. So like the Empowerment Scholarship for Unique Abilities, that's one program. There's also a Family Empowerment Scholarship for Economic Opportunities. There's, I think, World of Reading. There's a whole bunch of different ones. So make sure when you're getting the information, you are looking very specifically at the scholarship that you are applying for specifically. And because the rules, the guidelines, what's covered, what's not covered, are different for each program. So if you're looking at Unique Abilities, make sure you're getting the accurate information for Unique Abilities. And that's about it. This is just kind of a quick introduction. If you have other questions, we can try to help you a little bit as you go. But this is, it's a complicated process. So most of the time, most of the answers you're going to need are going to be from either AAA or Step Up. But we're happy to help if we can. And thank you.